Welcome to episode 77 of the Rex Chapman Show with my super dope homeboy from the Lextown, Josh Hopkins. What up, Josh?
What's happening, Rex Everett?
I'm hanging. I'm in Brooklyn. Where are you?
I'm in Lexington visiting
in Lexington,
Mama.
Kentucky.
Yeah,
okay.
Yeah.
How's Mom? Yeah. Doing okay?
She is. She's doing really well.
Good. How's my mom?
She's doing great, too.
Great. Thank you. Tell her
I love it when they come over and visit. It's so great. They like each other so much. It's great.
It is. It's fun. Episode 77, Josh. We're getting up there. One of my favorite teammates ever, number 77. We called him Gitsa, which apparently we were told meant little man in Romanian. George Murasan, number 77, 7 feet 7 inches tall.
Yeah. Wow.
We when we got George, he was still growing, and finally did surgery on his pituitary gland to stop him from growing. But how about that? And his mom and dad were 5'4" and 5'1".
What is that like to be in a league of pituitary issues, and then this guy shows up?
Yeah,
where
it's crazy.
Everybody where people look tiny, giants look tiny.
Shaq was the one guy in the league that, he just dwarfed everyone with his athleticism, but his size, he's big. He's big like Joel Embiid is big. He's just big, a large human. Big George was so slow, but in a half court, he was the one guy maybe that Shaq played against that you could take a chance on not double teaming from time to time, because George was just so big. And if he stayed down on Shaq and pushed him out far enough, he could do a decent job. Right. And that's saying something, because Shaq was a different kind of specimen.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Luka is 77.
Yep.
And rest in peace, Lyle Alzado.
Lyle Alzado. Ray Bork. Yeah.
Ray Bork.
Yeah. Good number 77s. Yes.
Yeah. That was very good.
Let's see what else. LeBron hurt. Going to be out for at least 3 weeks.
Yeah. Terrible timing, huh?
That's terrible timing.
Starting to come around.
I think you can mark them off. I'm not buying anymore. KD played his first game for my Phoenix Suns last night, or a couple nights ago, and I'm anxious to see more.
Yeah,
it'll be fun watching the Suns down the stretch.
Exactly.
Josh,
the Mavs not doing great.
The Mavs struggling. They gave up. They've given up some leads, and it will be interesting.
Did you read anything this week?
Oh yeah. No, I didn't read anything.
Oh well, me neither.
Sorry, you didn't.
Club.
Okay,
nope. That's been book club.
Josh, we have great guests. I said that right. Guests, plural. We have great guests today. Yes, we have twins are joining the show. We have stand-up comedians, actors, and co-hosts of View from the Cheap Seats podcast. Mm-hmm. Guess who we have? We have Farrell Randall Sklar and Jason Nathan Sklar, the Sklar Brothers.
What's happening, dudes? How are you? Thanks for having us.
Oh, this is awesome. So awesome.
Love it.
I'm trying to think the first time I would have seen you guys. It seems like you've been around forever. Like, what was your first experience with on television or behind the camera at all?
Jay, our first TV was it Louis Anderson's stand-up show?
Nope. That came after MTV.
Okay, so
it's MTV, right? No.
So we had a show in 1997 on MTV called Apartment 2F, and it was kind of like right in that sweet spot when they were doing the 10 spot. It was like us and Austin Stories and Singled Out. And I mean, it was smack dab in the middle of the 90s is when we were doing our thing. And it was great. It was like this
chains on your pants and just
long sideburns. Terrible. Like someday I'll make fun of this mustache I have right now. But back then we thought we looked cool. I mean, we all just wanted to be the Beastie Boys. That was it.
Yes, exactly. What are you guys' first memories of being funny? But also being funny together.
Yeah. We so as twins and certainly as back in the days before fertility drugs, it was a rarer occurrence that you would have twins. So immediately we'd have attention on us. I just remember always trying to be funny once the attention was on us. Our dad was a funny guy.
Our dad was the kind of guy. He was the kind of guy who he would take us on his errands with him. We'd be in the backseat of his giant Monte Carlo with the freaking two-door,
why he got a two-door for a family. It just tells you all you need to know about the guy. You're like, what are you doing, Dad? Like a two-door. So every time we have to get in your car, you got to open this humongous door and then fold the seat up that never actually flipped and then climb in the back. You might as well got a Trans Am with a T-top and had us like climb in through the roof. It was
so he would put us in the car. We'd be in the car while the car was running. Like, hello, pedophiles, just pull on up and grab two twins at this buffet.
At this running car.
And he'd go into like the cleaners and we'd look through the front window and he'd be interacting with whoever he was interacting with. And he would, within like 30 seconds, the person would be smiling or laughing. And we kind of like absorbed that and saw that as like, oh, that's really cool. Like, I think we got it a little bit without fully getting it,
And then when we were in school, we were funny, but not to the point of like being class clowns and getting in trouble. Although the one time I really did get in trouble, I had the worst home economics teacher. I mean, she was awful. She was just a mean person who should not have been teaching. Like now as an adult, I can like actually have some perspective and be like, this woman shouldn't have been teaching. That just wasn't her thing. She didn't like kids. She didn't like being around people. And, home economics for a lot of people, they didn't know how to cook. They don't know how to sew. And these are like seventh graders. Like, we don't understand this stuff. You might understand it, but we don't. And she just didn't have the ability to teach. She was a mean person. So on Halloween that year, she comes to school dressed like she's got like a very realistic, like ape mask on. I mean, very realistic, scary ape mask on. And she's wearing it the whole time. And I guess 3/4 into the class, it's hot. She's like trying to teach the class with this thing on. She took the mask off. And the second she took it off, I screamed. Now, that was a great bit.
For a 13-year-old, not bad.
Not a bad joke. I mean, she took it off and I screamed. And I, of course, got sent down to the principal's office and we called our dad. And he was like, he's like, did it get laughs? I'm on the phone in the principal's office and I'm the only one who can hear me. He's like, did it get laughs? And I was like, He's like, all right, I'll see you at home later. That was it. So he wasn't mad because, that wasn't our thing, was to like disrupt class. We were good students and we worked hard, but like those moments, I think we kind of got like a little push in that direction, whether he knew it or not. I don't think he ever knew. Like no one ever knew in our family. We didn't come from a family of entertainers, vaudevillian performers. It was just like, yeah, this is just what you do. You just are trying to entertain people in a fun way, the people that are in our circle.
Man, that's just amazing. So you did make good grades. Did you have to work at making good grades or did it come pretty naturally?
I think we had to work at it. We were, if I'll make a basketball analogy, we were probably like
basketball. What's that?
Well, let me get into it to explain. We were like decent ability guys who like high achieving guys, meaning like we knew that if we outworked everyone around us, we could be double guys, and that's what we became. We were probably like 7'6" guys who pushed our way up to be like 14'10" guys. You know what I'm saying? And that's what we were. And I think that came from hard work. And then that did translate. We played sports too. We played baseball was our big sport, but soccer and baseball in St. Louis. And again, same deal. We just like outworked. We be in the front yard throwing a ball back and forth for like 3 hours a day in the afternoon.
Did your dad play sports? Why did you play sports?
So our dad was it was funny because our dad was like an overweight guy. He was like a fun fat guy, but like he was a great athlete. Like he played tennis and he could bowl and he was like a good dancer. Like he has like light on his feet, like he almost could have been like an offensive lineman who had like, just good footwork,
light on his feet, like a dancing bear.
So he's about like 5'8", 240 or 250. So like the big guy, but at the same time, loved sports and then played a little bit and played golf and whatnot. So like we loved it. And because there were two of us, it was so easy. Like we would just be like, okay, we're going up to the junior high school to play tennis. And you had someone to play with who was about your ability. It's better than hitting against a wall because it's forcing you to get better. So we had each other to throw a baseball around with. We had each other to play tennis with. We go out and play golf and stuff like that. So those things, he encouraged us to do that stuff, which was like, go get outside, go do that stuff, spend the whole day doing that stuff. And we loved it. And we had a bunch of neighborhood kids too that would play a bunch of sports. So there'd be like a football game on the corner and just come out of our house and we'd be in there. My favorite is like, our mom was so cool about not like harsh, like not like ruining our experience. But it doesn't matter. Like, this is just how dumb kids are. Like, our mom would be in the gentlest way, come outside and not even single us out by name, like come outside and 2 doors down, we'd be playing in some massive like neighborhood football game. And she would just come out at like 6 o'clock and she'd be like, okay, dinner. And we would turn to our friends and be like, oh my God, she's all over us. What is she doing? God, you're not a mother, you're a smother. We're like, Jesus Christ. Because we just want to play until you couldn't play anymore, until you could barely see each other. We're like, it was, growing up in St. Louis, Missouri, that was kind of what we had at that point. And it was wonderful. And I think our dad loved that because he played sports. And again, even though he couldn't really do it at that sort of a level, he liked that we did. He coached all of our teams too. He loved that.
Oh, that's great.
Yeah, I hate being like the old, because I think we're all around the same age and being that guy. But remember going outside and having neighbors and you knew them and you all played stuff.
I mean,
all right, that's the end zone. The end of his driveway is the end zone.
Right.
The end of your driveway is the other end zone. Let's go.
That's it.
Can I tell you
watch out for the Pinto?
Okay, so can I tell you one of my favorite sports moments of all time of like my career of neighborhood sports? So we had this game. We would throw a tennis ball, and then with like it wasn't a wooden bat, Jay. What was it? It was, or maybe it was like a wooden bat, or maybe it was an aluminum bat. We would hit it, and it was like you're playing home run derby. So if you hit it out the yard, across the street, into the other yard, it was considered a home run. If you hit it, it's not a home run. And I remember one time, it's like we needed one home run to beat the other team. And I hit it, and it looks like it's going to just bounce in the middle of the street. And all of a sudden, the newspaper truck, which was basically like a Bronco with a back on it, drives by. It hits the top of the Bronco and goes into the yard. And we're like, yes, that's it. Like the ultimate neighborhood rules.
Why don't we have this on tape? Why don't we have an instant replay? We need like ESPN announcers calling this. Like, that's what we need.
It's so funny because Rex has all these, basketball players and sports figures on, and they're like, oh yeah, game 3. It was 97. We were down 2. We were coming down. I was on the left side.
Yeah.
And us 3, we're like, yeah, hit it. And it bounced.
Newspaper truck all across the yard.
I remember some great, tackle football games in the churchyard,
Oh my
Stiff
God.
arm on Pat Elkin. And no one.
Gone.
To the house, baby. Yes.
So fun.
Yes. I grew up with my best friends from, I think I told you when I came on your guys' pod, my best friends from age 8, twins. And they hilarious, not entertainers, funny to us.
Of course.
Right. Right. Funny around you guys.
Hilarious to us.
Uh-huh.
They fought though. They would fight. Did you guys fight growing up?
Oh my God. We were the worst. Like, no, we were the worst if we were on the same team. It was worse than if we were against each other. Like the worst. Because
like other people would stop playing if we were on the same team with each other because we were so, you know how hard you are on yourself, Rex. You know, and I know you know, and we've talked to you about your life.
The standard with which you hold yourself. Now, imagine you now share DNA with someone. You feel like it is your right, even though that's another human being out in the world and people see you as two people. You're like, no, that's an extension of me. So whatever standard I hold myself to, I can now go after that person over there for screwing up a shot and all that other stuff in a way that you would never talk to anybody.
So I remember a baseball game where
high school baseball game.
I was in center field. Randy was pitching, and he walked a guy who then stole second, and he's now like 3-0 on the next guy, and he walks him. Then and so runners on first and second. Another guy comes up, he throws a ball, and I'm chirping. I'm like, you gotta throw strikes. What are you doing? You're letting down the whole team. And I'm
idiot. He's like screaming at me.
This is the worst. You're the worst. Like from center field. So much so that the guy from the other team was on second base, turns around and is like, give him a break, relax on him.
Yeah. The other
team's trying to talk me off the ledge.
Yeah.
Unbelievable.
Ridiculous. So we would do that we'd fight. Yeah. We'd get a lot of stuff out because we didn't love fighting in life. Yeah. We fought. Anytime we fought, it would be fast and it would be done. And it would be like, okay, move on. You got to move on, like settle it and move on, because I don't know if you're this way. I just don't love hanging stuff over your head. Just feels like
we never held grudges. But we would it was almost like an expenditure of energy, you know, like,
you got to get it out.
It's funny because I think a lot of people didn't understand how like Jordan Poole and Draymond Green could be around each other, like after what happened, because we got an insight into like a very dark moment of their thing. But as brothers, Randy and I actually understood. We're like, oh yeah, they were in the heat of the moment and they just literally saw nothing in front of them except I need to expend this energy on this person. And then it was over and then they're fine. But the rest of the world is like, whoa, we need to recover. But we understood that from our own history of how we related to each other. It was weird.
I know you guys have been on screen and on shows and on so much stuff. And I always try and explain to people, it's like hearing yourself on the answering machine times 100.
Yeah.
And because I'm always like, what didn't people tell me I'd walk like that? I'd walk. Why didn't I say that? I don't have friends, you know, I need to go get plastic surgery immediately. When you have a twin, are you ever like growing up, like, do I do that? Like he does it? Like that's a weird way to jump off that. I wouldn't jump off.
It gives you a mirror to see but it also, at the same token, I have to give our parents credit because they're like, you guys are different people. That's great. So they taught us how, and I don't even know how they did it because, you know,
I mean, it was even by accident. I don't know that they knew this was like
it may be unintentional, but they were smart about the way they raised us.
So you didn't dress alike.
Did not dress alike at all. They're like, we don't want you to be this.
Twins did when I was growing up. They dressed alike, in grade school and middle school.
Even sailor outfits.
No, our parents were like, no, we don't want you to dress alike. We know that you're two separate people. You guys should be able to rely on each other, but not be dependent on each other, which is
that's smart.
It's smart and it's very subtle, the difference between those two things. Rely on each other, but don't depend on you don't be dependent on each other. Depend, but not be dependent, meaning it can't just be the two of you. You got to find friends. You got to do other things. We're going to thankfully the schools put us in separate classes because early on when we were babies, we would keep each other up. If one was crying, the other one would be up. They put us in separate rooms, which wound up being a stroke of genius because now you can be
also you've always had that mustache. So
when I was 3, I had this great stash.
Right.
That'd be great. 3-year-old with the mustache. No, but I do think that we it actually, that whole thing, I think, allowed us to do what we do today. And now our families have kind of substituted that. So in our families, we're not like the Sklar Brothers, although our kids kind of dig it. They actually really enjoy the stuff that we do. but they also are kind of like, no, you're dad. You're the dad who forgot to put the thing in my lunch. Oh, way to go, dad. You were supposed to be here at 4:18 to pick me up. And even though I just texted you 3 minutes ago and you live 20 minutes away, like you sort of like, and that has nothing to do with twins, has nothing to do with the other. So it's good because then that allows us to get together and go out on the road and do comedy. And when we, worked on just did this show for the UFC, the Nosebleeds, which was basically cheap seats, but for the UFC, working on that is like a dream. It's a gift. It's time away from the other stuff, which again, I think our parents taught us that at an early age. You have your time individually and then you come together and it becomes a little bit more special.
Yep.
It's so different that you guys, like, if you went to the mall, remember mall? If you went to the mall and you're together, people are all over you. If you go alone, is it just a complete, because I've never seen one of you on a show without, like you're one to me in a lot of ways, when you go alone, do people not recognize you? Because if you go together, everybody will.
No, they do.
They do recognize us individually. It's kind of cool. I mean, I think we're just
that is cool,
specific looking, but like it is kind of cool. And, we never set out to be famous. That wasn't our goal. Our goal was, in fact, we have friends who have gotten to be tremendously famous and they hate it.
Yeah.
It really alters their lives and they can't do simple things,
like Josh. It's like Josh
is so famous. It's you can't do this on Zoom. He's not allowed to tell us what location.
Josh, you can't go to Biscuitville. Isn't Biscuitville a place nearby? Do you know what Biscuitville is, or is that only in the deep South?
I think that's probably only the deep South.
Only the deep South. That might be.
Tell me more.
Is Bojangles?
Bojangles.
Okay, Bojangles.
Yeah, Bojangles.
Bojangles and Biscuit. Right? You go to a Bojangles and forget it. Shut it down.
Yeah.
Right. Go to a Waffle House. You go to Waffle House and people are like, I know you and I want to fight you. No, they're throwing chairs at you over the kitchen. Wait, why do they have an open concept kitchen at Waffle House? Those people are not protected enough.
Just keep them away. It doesn't have to be wide open.
So no, what's really cool is that we live in our families and we're in our lives. And, when you're in your family, you're like out of a family of 4 people. If you're the dad, you're like the 4th most important person in your house. Like your opinion matters not at all. And
so like when you go to a movie set and you look, there's like a call sheet of like when the actors get there and you look up at whoever's number 1 is like the most important person or the reason why this show is getting made. If you're 1 and 2 on the call sheet, like you get the biggest trailer, you have everybody's looking, you usually have an assistant and all this other stuff. We've been on enough movie sets to be like, all right, that's number 1. There's number 2 on the call sheet. In your family, if you have 2 kids and a partner, you're number 4 on the call sheet. That's just what it is.
You don't matter. So that's why we'll show up to the set and some like PA will be like, hey, so do you want breakfast? I can go get you a burrito. And we're like, who the hell are you talking to? Oh, me. Oh, us. Are you talking about us? Oh, okay, fine. So we forget about that when we go out into the world, and like every once in a while, someone will be like, "Oh my God, you guys!" Like, or they'll say to me, like when I'm by myself, I'm not thinking about it, but they're like, "Hey, man, I'm a fan," or "I like this," or "I was a fan of this thing," or "I saw this thing." Doesn't happen all the time, but it happens, once in a while, enough to where it doesn't ruin your life, but enough to where it makes us feel good. It's kind of the perfect amount. What's weird is sometimes it'll happen with my kids, and we kind of, we don't make a big deal. My kids, I still have a young kid who's 9, and she'll be like, who is that person? Do you know them? And I'm like, no. And they're like, how do they know you? And I'm like, it's too hard to explain. They just do.
My kids went through that. My older 2 remembered when I played. The youngers didn't. And, I'd be at the mall or wherever, and somebody'd come up and say hi, and they'd go, who was that?
Right.
Yeah. I don't know.
I don't know them.
What's going on?
How do they know you? Yeah. Like, how do they know? It's so hard for someone who doesn't just understand all of that to be explained that. They've seen me do this. The thing that I do at work is a public thing that everybody can see, and they've seen me do it, and maybe they're a fan of the things that
what I liked was our older kids would like look at me or their mom and be like, dummies. They don't know. They're like 9.
Yeah, if they only knew.
So go ahead, Josh. No.
Well, I just think it's so interesting that your first thing that you really did and that brought you out was the MTV show.
Yeah.
And that's the mid 90s. MTV, there were
Huge.
It was huge, and it was the right audience. It was, and to not have done much, that had to be night and day, like barely anyone I can imagine, just like flipping the switch and you're famous.
So we were 24 when we got the pilot, and 25, which, we're right out of school, went to the University of Michigan.
That's crazy. Yeah. Why Michigan? I want to know, did you ever think of going somewhere else and Michigan also? Right.
So we applied to 3 schools. We applied to Wisconsin, Michigan, and Penn. Let's go. Right. Okay. So Penn, we got into all 3. And then visited just Michigan and Penn, because at the time we're like, look, if we're going to go to a big state school, it's going to be Michigan, between Michigan and Wisconsin. Little did we know years later, Wisconsin is just an unbelievable city. Madison is so cool. The school itself is amazing. And we would have had a wonderful time at Madison. And now there's
they didn't teach you. You guys didn't hear about Kentucky? All the way for 18 years. You had.
By the way, we should have, because we grew up in St. Louis. It's like right there. I mean, put it this way: we traveled and visited Paducah, Kentucky, and we still didn't know about
our neck of the woods.
That's right. We still didn't know about Kentucky, but so we applied to those schools. Went to Michigan. Our cousin was there. She was a year ahead of us in school, but only 4 months older than us, and an only child, grew up in LA, and she was like a sister to us because we were kind of like an only entity, right. And so we're all kind of like 4 months apart. And she was a really good friend of ours. We loved her, and she was at Michigan, and we went up and visited her. And her friends took us out. We had the best time. She had a friend who was on the baseball team. She had friends at this party and that party. And they took us out and treated us like we went to school there. And we're like, this is fun. These kids are smart. These kids are cool. They care about their work, but at the same time, they're out having a fun time. Then we went to Penn and we met all these really great people, but everyone was stressed out. They worked on Wall Street. And you're like, right. You guys are in college, man. There's time to be stressed out later. They just all seemed like they had a huge, like an anvil of weight on their shoulders. Yeah. Yeah. And just stressed in ways that you're like, I don't know if I want that for the next 4 years. I'd much rather do the other thing. And Michigan was close to St. Louis. And I think not to even get more granular, but at the time there was a Northwest Airlines. That's how old we are. Remember Northwest Airlines? There was a Northwest Airlines flight from St. Louis to Detroit, which is where we'd fly. That was $39 round trip. And we kind of said to our parents, we can get up and down. You guys can get up and visit us. And it's we might as well just take a swing at this and go here. And it was the best thing we could have ever done, because now we're very close and tied into the university years later. My daughter, who's 17, just got in. Wow. She's going next year. So the circle completes, that's really cool. Huge. So
Jim Harbaugh will text us every once in a while asking for a joke.
Yeah. He's so funny.
He gives you a lot of material too.
He does. So
he does. We went. This is the best thing about Harbaugh. This is the best thing about Harbaugh.
We went on his podcast. You're so right. And he was like, man, I don't get it. He's like, whenever I'm trying to be funny, no one laughs. And whenever I'm not trying to be funny, people laugh. And we started laughing. And he was like, I wasn't
trying to be funny. We're like, that's funny.
We're like, we got to teach you something, man.
Yeah, you're a football coach. You're not a comedian. You're not an entertainer.
But as comedians, we say, any laugh you get, take it. Sometimes we're on stage. Sometimes we're on stage and we'll be setting up a joke and it'll get a laugh where it's never gotten a laugh before. Do you think we go, hey, no, you're doing that wrong, audience. Stop laughing. No, we're like, okay, good.
Thank you. More. Let's go down that road. It's like the shot that Hunter Dickinson made this past week to send it to overtime. We're like, it's not a last second heave. You practice that shot. I intended to do that. We do that every day. I shoot that 100 times a day. I know exactly. You know what I mean? Take it, accept it. Right. Lean into it, lean into that. That's your shot and that's your thing. And so, I mean, it's just in life, there's so few victories that when you do get the one, just embrace it and love it. And so that's what we've sort of learned to do over time. And especially with our business, which is such a, you guys have kind of, understood it on a certain level too. The entertainment business is it's like athletics, high level athletics. Only a small number of people get through and do something. Yeah. It's hard to do it on a high level. Your chances come few and far between. So you got to love them when they come.
So I kind of stepped on, very well put. I kind of stepped on Josh there. So you're in your mid 20s
Mhm.
and you get this opportunity with MTV. How does it come about? Who do you credit the big break? And how mind blowing was that for you? Did you set out to do this? At what age did you, or at what point at Michigan did you go, we can maybe get into this space? Or
That's a great question. We started doing stand-up when we were 14. We actually got on
holy
stage.
shit.
Yeah, we got on stage. It's like you think about athletics, it was almost like high school, man. We started at 14. We did it at a high school show. We taped it. Friend of ours was in Kansas City. He was 15 doing comedy sports, which is like improv in Kansas City. And he said, someone just came through here and they're looking for comedians younger than 16 for a TV show. Do you guys have any tape on what you did? We're like, yeah, we just taped this set. And so we sent this tape in, not thinking anything we'd ever hear from them, out to LA. And then we get a phone call at our house like 3 months later. And we're on the phone that has the extended cord from the kitchen that wraps around every room. So we're like, take it into the dining room, into the living room, and then back into the den. You're still on the phone. You're still on the phone. Yeah. And they're like, and there's no speakerphone. So we're both huddled around like the receiver. And the person's like, hey, we saw a lot of tapes and hundreds of tapes, and yours is one of the 10 that we really liked. And, there's a couple jokes on here that we recognize from like major comedians that you cannot do. So here's what we recommend. We're like, obvious. This is like the first time we've ever done stand-up. So we did some of our favorite bits. And then we wrote some original stuff. They're like, keep the original stuff, do some other stuff, go up to your local comedy club and perform. And so we're like, we can't do that. So we called the local comedy club. They're like, how old are you? We said, we're 15. I think at the time we were turned 15. And they're like, yeah, you can't perform here. This is a bar. Like, goodbye. And so we call them back and we're like, it's not going to work. And we were relieved because we're like, we didn't know what we were doing. They said, hang on a second. And 5 minutes later, we get a call back from the club. They had spoken to the club and they're like, you're on Tuesday. And we panicked.
That's
and then
terrifying.
But we didn't fully even understand. So there's the first time we were asked to guest host Jim Rome's radio show, I had been doing Jim Rome's Burning, his TV show, and I got close with Travis Rogers, who was his producer at the time, along with Jay Stu. And Travis was like, hey man, Rome's got to get out this Friday. Do you and your brother want to guest host the show? And, our thing was like, yeah, we say yes and answer questions later. So kind of like in this instance, we said yes, and then we'll worry about it later. And thankfully, we listened to the show, but didn't understand the depth of fandom of that show. Thank God, or else we would have been so freaked out. We wouldn't have done it. We've been like, we can't walk in here. So we walked into there, prepared this deep outline of exactly the way we would do the show if we were doing the show. And yeah, there are definitely people who are like, this sucks. This is the worst piece of garbage I've ever heard. But there were a lot of people who were like, I absolutely love this. And thankfully, we weren't like so in our heads thinking about, the best way when you play sports, you do stuff. You're not thinking, you're just literally you're moving and doing and reacting. Mm-hmm. That's what we were doing. And it was great. So we kind of were like, let's just do this. We're 15 years old. Let's just do this. And we did the best we could. And we struggled because, doing stand up in front of your high school versus doing stand up in front of adults who have paid to be there.
It'd be like going and trying to play in the NBA at 14. Yeah. Like you can't be in a professional situation with no experience. It's like impossible.
Josh knows my son, they're best buddies. My son's 30 now, but he played ball, played in front of crowds and whatnot. And then when he stopped playing, he pledged a fraternity. And as part of the hazing process, each guy had to do a 3-minute stand-up set.
Oh my God.
Hard.
And I was terrified for him. He
feels like hours. It's hours. 3 minutes, right? It's like 3 hours.
So my question to you guys is, obviously it's got to be terrifying at first, even if you're funny and you're prepared. Do you still get nervous before going out and doing that now?
I mean, we kind of know that for years of doing it, 35 years plus years of doing it. Like, with 36 years, we know what's going to work and what isn't going to work, but you get nervous that the audience is going to be weird. Maybe they're not your audience. You're going to have to dig yourself out of something, or something weird's going to happen. It's like doing stand-up is like summiting Mount Everest. It can look perfect. Yeah. And then like way off in the distance is like a cloud, which I would describe as a bachelorette party like walks in, you're like, oh shit, here we go. You know what I mean? It's like, this is a perfect conditions, and now everybody's going to die, including a guide from New Zealand. You know what I mean? Like his legs are going to be sticking out of the mountain.
No, it's so true. And I would say the only time we get like doing a late night TV set, doing a set of comedy on late night television, you only get 5 minutes. It's like, you kind of there's nowhere to recover. Like if you get out and you're doing an hour-long set and the set starts off a little wonky, you have 45 minutes to come. But it's like, imagine, it's almost like being like a role player who's just coming in like 4 minutes.
Got to come in and make 2 threes and you've only played 2 minutes.
So if you come in and you miss the first 3, then you're like, well, how many more shots do I have? I get 1 or 2, and this could be a freaking shit show. So we, when we did Conan in 1999 and it went great. And then we didn't do it for a while. And we did it again in like 2011, 12. And we had a set that we loved and we felt really good about it. And we got on the show, and the jokes, we had tried to set out all over LA. We were doing it everywhere. We get on the TV show that night and that day or evening, and it's not going as well as we're used to. And you can feel it in us. And then there was like a weird lighting shift that we didn't ask for that's in the middle of our set. It was very odd. We walked away and we were like, that was a disaster. We were so upset. Meanwhile, it was like fine, but it wasn't like amazing. So the last time we did it was the last week before the pandemic. We were the final comedians on his old show.
It's like March 9th, 2020. Okay, that's when we do his show.
And we get on the set, and it's been like almost a decade since we'd done it and done stand up on it. And we were nervous. I was really nervous because I'm like, you only have a limited shot. We got out there, we did our first couple jokes, and they killed, and we felt really good, and we relaxed and breathed into it and took our time. And it was the most fun I've ever had on a show before. But we were definitely nervous beforehand. Like,
that's such. I'm so glad you explained it like that. It's not. I think that's why playing basketball as opposed to like football, beside you can get killed in that sport, is that it's rapid. We play every day. Also, there's so many possessions, you can redeem yourself like that.
That's right.
But there's something to be said, because there's a certain amount of nerves before every game, no matter how good you are. You're playing against other people who are really good. But confidence is just such a beautiful thing. And you said when you nail those first couple of jokes, you you could breathe and and then now you take a little more chance. Maybe I throw one a little too high trying to hit a home run, on an alley-oop, but it might have worked. It might have worked. So
I love it.
It was well put by you guys.
I mean, that was great. And to go back literally to Josh's question at the beginning, getting that show, the MTV show, at the same time, it was like transformative for us because it put us on the map. Yeah. But we got it too early. Like we got the reins too early. We weren't ready. We weren't mature enough. And it lasted for 1 season. It was a really interesting show. I mean, it had stand-up and sketches and short films in it. I mean, here's who were the stand-ups who did stand-up in the course of the show. Patrice O'Neill, R.I.P.
Wow.
Bill Burr did stand-up on the show. Patton Oswalt did stand-up on the show. Jim Norton. I mean, these are like titans.
Wow.
All those people did stand-up on the show. And then we had Amy Poehler from Upright Citizens Brigade and Matt Walsh from Veep. Those guys were on the show. Stephen Colbert did the second episode. Character he played like a British artist guy who was so funny, and Michael Showalter, who's a wonderful director now, he played a character. Zach Galifianakis was a regular cast member on the show. It was an insane show, and it launched a bunch of people, and it gave us a lot of the opportunity, but we just weren't ready for it. And we thought, because we were young and we were only 25 when it didn't go forward, we're like, well, maybe what if that's the last chance we ever get? If we ever get another chance, right? Here are the mistakes we don't want to make. And so we moved out to LA in 1999. We did a couple of guest spots on some shows and came out to LA. We're like, we got to get out here. We developed a show that didn't go, that ultimately, that happens in LA all the time. You develop a show for NBC and Warner Brothers, and it's going to go, and then it doesn't go. And you don't even make a pilot, but you get paid to do it and write it, and that's good. So then we get in the early 2000s, we get the opportunity to do this ESPN classic show, Cheap Seats, which was like Mystery Science Theater with the old weird sporting events, cheerleading, dog shows, super dogs. That's the best.
It's the best. It was the best.
So much fun. We love doing that show so much that we got the opportunity to do that show. First of all, they're like, do you want to do it in DC? We're like, no. They're like, they want to do it on the side of the PTI sets. So like, we already have the studio. We'll just build a little swing set right there. We're like, no. Then come up. No. They're like, then come up and do it in Bristol. And we're like, fuck. No. Are you? No, we don't want to be up in Bristol. Well, they do it in New York, and we wound up doing it at the New Yorker Hotel. There was right underneath the Hammerstein Ballroom, which is right by MSG.
Perfect.
Literally catty corner from MSG. But like, we're like, we know the New York comedy scene. If we want to bring people in to do sketches and things like that and do stuff on the show, this is it. And we finally got to do and not make the mistakes that we made on the first show. We kind of corrected all of that. And as a result, there's still things we would do differently. I think we're getting the opportunity to do those things differently now on the Nosebleeds. And if we get another season of that or another 2 seasons of that, we corrected some of the things we were doing in Cheap Seats. But I think the show stood the test of time because we were able to sort of make those adjustments. It's all about the adjustments you make.
I can't believe you all passed the chance of there's so much underground comedy in Bristol. Just a lot of talent there. Really,
the Hartford scene. Yeah, exactly. Exactly.
What would I mean, you guys have the most interesting career. It's this niche you've built out that's unbelievable, where you're actors, you're hosts, you're comedians, you're in the sports world. You probably dance. I don't know, but you guys
Dancing with the Sklars. Let's do that show right now. Let's do it.
What would 11-year-old you guys think? I mean, it's the
great
perfect
question.
It's like I host, I act, I create, I write. People associate you guys with sports that you get to talk about all day in so many ways. Like, I mean, way to go.
Thank you. That's a great question. What would the 11-year-old us say, Jay? That's a great question.
It's such a good question. I don't think the 11-year-old us would believe that we would be lucky enough to do this. I mean, it does feel like a dream. And Randy and I talk about this all the time. We talk about like trying to understand like what is success and what feels like success to us as we get older, as we've been doing this for a long time, because we really have had, and there are so many sports analogies, we really have had an improbable career. It's kind of unbelievable it's almost like being in the NBA for like 22 years without ever being an all-star. And I'm not saying we're not all-stars. I'm just saying if being an all-star means having a hit movie or a long-running network television show, like it's almost impossible to be sort of like a journeyman, someone who's been there that long. So you get all the joys and wonderment of getting to do what you always dreamed of doing. And then also you don't have the trappings that are bad. Like, we're around for our kids as they're growing up. We're involved in their lives. We've been able to be there at every step of the way, and we get to do what we want to do. So like at the 11-year-old me wouldn't have even understood how great that even weird turn of events is. And while it's hard sometimes, where there's times where we're like, this thing has to come through, and we really are counting on something to come through instead of coming from a place of comfort, it's still been amazing. And I think, for us, we talk about this all the time. There's a great story, and I don't even know if it's true, and I don't even know if I'm attributing it the right way, but it's a great little story about Kurt Vonnegut, great American author, and Joseph Heller. Kurt Vonnegut wrote Breakfast of Champions. Joseph Heller, who wrote Catch-22, great American novelist. Supposedly, legend is that they were at a party in the Hamptons at some rich like investment
douchebag investor, like investment banker, like guy's got more money than God. Okay.
Right? And they're at this giant mansion, and Kurt Vonnegut or Joseph Heller says to Vonnegut, doesn't that piss you off? This guy, this douchebag, this guy makes more money in a week than you made on your last 2 books that you worked hard on for 2 years, and you didn't, you worked so hard on it, you didn't think you were good enough, and you stressed out about it, and you put your whole life into it.
And it's one of the American classics. It's like something that resonates with people, and it goes to everybody. And again, this guy in a week makes more than you made in the entire 2 years you slaved away at creating something that will stand the test of time.
And Vonnegut says, yeah, but we've got something that this guy will never have. And he's like, oh yeah, what is that? And he's like, enough. So there it is.
Nice.
That's
it.
So how can you find what is enough for you that fits with what you're capable of and what you're doing? Or how can you then learn to appreciate what you have? Because that guy who makes more money than God, if you are chasing that and trying to have the biggest house on the street, there's always going to be a house that's bigger than yours. There's always going to be someone who has a prettier.
You're gonna pull your yacht into the old bay there, and then there's just gonna be some bigger one right there. Yeah. How come I don't have that? Then your boat sucks.
You're just gonna be chasing, and enough. They'll never find enough. If you find enough somewhere along the way, then you win. You actually win the game, and you feel better about yourself. And I think that's what we've sort of the work we've been trying to do. And maybe that's out of necessity because we're not overwhelmed with like crazy, insane success, but we have been able to do the shows we wanted to do. We did get to create a show that went 77 episodes that people still, when they see us, say, you know what? My dad and I used to sit down and watch the show.
Yeah.
Or my dad loves sports and I hate sports, but the only show we were able to watch was Cheap Seats. Or Glendon Rush from the Cubs of all, we're Cardinals fans, the Cubs of all teams. He's like, you know what was on our TiVo? I think that's how old this was. You know what was on our DVR in our clubhouse?
In 2005, Kerry Wood, Mark Pryor. Like I hated those teams because those teams just killed the Cardinals. They were amazing teams. You're like, God damn it, the Cubs. You hated them. He's like, you know what was on our TiVo? The only thing on our TiVo was episodes of your show. We'd go in the clubhouse as Cubs and we just would watch your show.
God,
and you're like,
great.
Come on, man. Aaron Rodgers. I saw Aaron Rodgers somewhere and he was like, hey man, where's your brother? And I'm like, he's not always with him. And he's like, you guys, man, Cheap Seats. Can we take a minute and talk about that? And I'm like, dude, so you're cool. Aaron Rodgers. So that.
And then you guys did ayahuasca, right?
Then we did ayahuasca and we were in a darkness retreat for like 4 days. I'm like, how did I get?
So we're in a sound bath for 3 days. But I mean, that's just hanging out with Aaron Rodgers. I love it.
And then you want to do sounding, which is sticking this long metal tube.
Okay.
I'm kidding. So,
beer doll.
No. But those are the moments where we sit back and we're like, dude, those are examples of when you're asking yourself, what is enough? What feels like enough? Those are those validating, cool moments where you're like, yeah, we did something here and we're going to keep doing it as long as we can. But I would say to my 11-year-old self would be like, I can't believe you guys get to do this.
You've built such a wonderful brand. Like anytime I see here the Sklar Brothers, I'm like, it just makes your brand's great. I'm like, great. Oh, cool. I want to see that. And, this might be a dangerous question because maybe we've already asked this, but I'm like, you guys have been interviewed and done so much. What's the worst couple questions that people ask you? Like that you always like, I can't believe the twin question, or, like, do you sleep with each other's wives and something like that? Is there?
We did on Entourage.
Yeah, that's right.
Did do it there, so we didn't have to do it in regular life.
Right.
Those questions are kind of crazy when you think about it, because those questions don't take it. You guys are. I love these questions that in this interview and this conversation, because it's a deep conversation. You guys understand what it takes to get to a certain place. And I think when you talk about our brand, that's a great question there, because, I think Jay and I could have very easily, because the simple question of did you guys switch on girls? And we're like, no, that's rape. And did you guys switch on people and that stuff? But even as kids, I would say our eye for what's funny was a little more discerning than that. We're like, well, anyone can do that. What can we do that's different? So we made a conscious choice not to like make our twinness the very center of everything that we do and everything we talk about. And every joke is the joke you expect that the twins are going to do. And we're like, that's just not where we want to go. Now, maybe that's the thing that's kept us from meteoric success, or maybe that's the thing that's given us the career that's lasted the longest, because you have to be actually good. You know, the best thing we ever saw one time was Seinfeld came in and he did a set of comedy at Gotham Comedy Club. We were performing there. I mean, Jay, how long ago was it? Like 22 years ago?
No, probably like
15 years ago,
15 years ago, 12 or 15 years ago.
15 years ago. And we're there and he comes in and we let him, of course, he just let him go up, and he goes up, and the crowd in New York, it had been like 10 years removed from Seinfeld, gets up and gives him a standing ovation. Now, I don't know how many times you've seen a standing ovation, but it is impressive every time. Standing O for like 3 minutes. I mean, just people basically saying thank you for everything that you've ever done. And they sat down, and the din settles, you know, like everybody's kind of down, like, oh my God, Seinfeld's here. And then he's got to be funny.
Yeah.
He can't just be like, remember that episode when Newman did? No, you gotta be funny, and you can't do your old jokes.
Yeah.
You gotta be funny with the new stuff that's right
Topical.
there.
Yeah.
It's got to be new stuff and it's got to stand shoulder to shoulder to your old stuff, or else people will be like, you know, I saw Seinfeld. It's not as funny. And he was amazing. Yeah. But like that moment of truth is there. So a gimmick, not that he's a gimmick, but I'm saying in the similar way, like something can get you to a certain place, but then ultimately you have to prove it over and over. So that's why I think we chose to be like, this is going to be our brand. Our brand is going to be an interesting style of two-man comedy that is sort of loosely based on the fact that we have this great connection between each other. Maybe it's a connection that most people don't have, but it's going to be funny first. And the fact that we're twins makes it unique and different second, and hopefully memorable.
It's just amazing how you guys, you tell the same story, you jump in, you cut each other off, you pick right up, and you can see that there's no animosity with it. I'm sure there might be sometimes behind the scenes.
This is fun.
You never give it off. I felt like it was such a treat, a gift growing up with twins as best friends.
Yeah. Awesome.
Because, you see, friends are friends, but there was 4 or 5 of us 5 or 6 of us that just grew up together from the age of 8 all the way through 18, played high school sports, basketball, all that stuff together.
Awesome.
I guess thinking about you guys as 11-year-olds, we didn't like it when our friends fought. But watching you guys fight each other, hilarious.
You could do it all day, like
hilarious. Maybe just try to get you in a fight. Did
you hear what he said about you?
Yeah,
bro, he's talking to you, man.
Did your friends kind of feel that way as well?
I think what you're hinting at, truthfully, is. So if you see 2 friends actually get into a physical fight, it is terrifying. And you're like, oh my God, this might be the end of the friendship. But I do think you deep down know, if you see 2 twins, your friends, you're like, they're going to get over this. And then tomorrow we're going to be right back here on the field or on the court playing, and we'll be fine. There is this sense of like, and I think that is, we know teams and musical groups that have broken up over time because either they couldn't deal with each other's personalities, or they couldn't somehow continue to go down this road together. And I don't think there's a fear of that for us, even when like things get hard in one of our lives and the other person has to pick up the slack. There's never high-end resentment, and I can only say that because I've never picked up the slack. It's only been Randy, but
there's resentment. I'm just kidding.
There's never resentment. There's tons of resentment, but no one's ever leaving, because I do think we have this vision of this thing that we've created that we want to keep doing, that we do think is unique and special, that we think has more room to grow and more things to do. And so the fear of that is not ever present. Like, no one's walking into the room every day threatening to disappear forever. And I think that without that even in the room, you grow and get better. And I think that's why you were able to be like, I want to watch these 2 brothers fight, because you know what? They're going to be fine.
They're going to be fine. They're going to be fine. It's just enjoyable. I mean, it's funny because you talked about that for the first time, Jay. I'm like, I understand what you're talking about both of us having the same goal is very similar to the best sports teams is the buy-in. What is your buy-in to the end goal? Are we all bought into this thing? Because if we are, then we can fight and then get it out of the way. And we're then still on track. It's not like one person's going to be like, oh, I don't want to do this anymore. My goals aren't your goals. It's like, no, we have the same goals. We're arguing about this one thing that actually shows that we both care about it a lot. You want to see that arguing because it means that it means something to you. Someone's not going to walk away and be like, I don't want to do this anymore. So the buy-in is huge. I mean, I see it in sports all the time. It's so funny because we talk a lot about this on our podcast about NIL changing things in college sports and will it change things? I would like, look at Texas A&M's football team this year. They spent the most money on NIL and I don't know, 13 of their 24 people that they got last time are transferring out.
Right.
And the team was maybe sub 500, 5-7, 6-6. I don't even know. They weren't even that great. They were supposed to be the greatest recruiting class ever. Yeah. You're like, the team still matters. The team and buying into this thing and loving the thing that we're all going towards means we can fight. It's going to be okay. I'm all right. I'm all right. If you're yelling at me on the sidelines, it's okay because we both want this thing.
Gosh, we all have like the best friend and we finish each other's sentences, yada, yada. It's intriguing because we can't imagine the depths of what, you're not just twins, but then growing up and doing the same thing together, being business team and artist team. And you just can't imagine it. Like you get off this, like right now, and one goes, "Why'd you do that?" And the other one will know exactly what you're talking about. Do you have like one anecdote that it kind of shows that in some way, like something happened that you guys were like, well, like that, like
like blaming each other? So we used to tell,
not even blaming, just like the communication, that the things you get at the same time that your brother is understanding at the same time what you're thinking, like, oh, this douchebag or whatever, and you know each other do it at the same time. That's got to be great and annoying.
So Rex, you talk about growing up with these twins. What are their names? Your friends who are the twins?
It's Kevin and Keith Vanderpool. I'm glad you asked that because it's Kevin and Keith Vanderpool, which of course became the Pools, but it was V Pool before that.
V Pools.
The V Pools. Well, but Kevin's 4 minutes younger than Keith, so Keith is V Pool. Kevin is JV Pool.
That's funny.
Yeah,
and really, you're like solid.
Right. Who's older between
I'm
you
older
two?
by 5 minutes. I'm older by 5 minutes.
Which I'm like, what does that mean? It just means
it's a hell of a lot of it. Ask any coach down the stretch. You want 5 seconds to come back? You want 5 minutes?
5 minutes. 5 minutes.
That's true. I think you're just closer to the door on the way out, but whatever. That's my thing. But you talk about being around the Vanderpool.
I see it now with the mustache,
right?
It's he's going through something.
He's trying to make himself
look more mature.
And trying to raise myself up that extra 5 minutes. No, but the Vanderpool, hanging out with the Vanderpools, you guys were probably in the same place for a lot of really big experiences. You're like, if JV Pool starts talking about a story about something where you guys were all there, V-Pool can jump right in, right at the exact moment, and you can finish what they're saying because you were all there. You were all there when this thing happened at this moment in this important time when you guys were in high school or on the bus back from a basketball game or what have you. So like that is what, Josh, you were referring to too, that like we do have this thing where that shared experience growing up at the exact same time, the exact same frame of reference. We have the same parents. We really have a lot of the same friends. We grew up at the same time in St. Louis. It's funny because we know actor John Hamm. He grew up in St. Louis. He's a year older than us. We didn't know him when we were kids. He was a year older than us, but he was friends with our next door neighbor because they went to a school together. But we have such a closeness with that guy because we grew up in St. Louis at the exact same time. We all listen to the classic rock radio station KC95, and we can make fun of every single DJ who was on there. Like, we know that Ted Drew's frozen custard, if you've ever been to St. Louis, is the greatest frozen custard in the world. But there's also next door to it a Velvet Freeze ice cream place. We're like, why is there another ice cream place? Because sometimes the lines are so long that idiots who have never been there are like, I'm not going to wait in that line. And they go to Velvet Freeze. They get what's called the Velvet Freeze runoff. So describing that to John Hamm, you're like, okay, so Hamm, you're a really good looking guy. I'm sure if like we went out with you at the time, there'd be women all over you. And then there's a moment where people are like, I'm not going to get in that line, and they'll come and hang out with us. And you're like, we got the Velvet Freeze runoff, the John Hamm Velvet Freeze runoff. But like, to make that joke to him, you have to have grown up in St. Louis at that time. And that's a shared experience. So like, sometimes it's not even being like in the exact same room at the exact same time when it happened, but like there's a closeness that happens. My wife lived in Israel, or not Israel. Why did I say Israel? In St. Louis, lived in St. Louis. The years that I was there, her dad opened up the Saks Fifth Avenue store that was at the mall nearby us. And so like she and I bonded when we first started dating about being in St. Louis at that time, and the things we went to and the places we went to just immediately made us closer because of that thing. And then when you're twins, that's just heightened so much further.
I agree with that. And I think the other thing is what we've learned how to do. And again, this comes from, it's funny because we describe performing as playing with each other too. Like when someone lets us come on a show, we're always like, thanks for letting us come play. It is kind of interesting that it's like being in like a pickup game or whatever. But one of the things you have to do is while you're talking, be listening. And that's a very rare thing. Few people do this on this earth. I think we'd be better off as a human race if people actually didn't want to only get their point out. And like, if they felt someone trying to enter the conversation, then that means they have something they really want to say. So listen, finish your point, let them come in. Trust. So there's a lot of trust that has to go on too between the two of us. Like if I feel Randy coming in, then he's got a point he really wants to make, and I have to trust that it's going to be a worthwhile point. So I back off. If it's not, I can sit there and make fun of him.
Take your most racist uncle. Once he starts talking at Thanksgiving, like everybody's like waiting to jump in to get him so he doesn't say, why do all these people, get the crackers. Like, why do all, and then get him out of there? You know what I mean? You're like, you don't trust him. You don't trust anything he's going to say. You don't trust him to have the microphone. You don't trust him with the ball at the end of the game. You're just like, get it out of his hands. Get him on the bench. Someone like get him out, send him to the locker room.
But for us, we trust each other, and we trust that the other person's coming in with something. And hopefully, if you are in that mode where you're being creative, something that you can build on. So you put this block in, they put that block in, and before you know it, you're climbing together.
You just had the greatest moment, I think, of the entire podcast. We've had almost 80 now. We're climbing.
Yeah.
And right when you were like, well, my wife grew up in Israel. What?
Why did I say that? Why did I say that?
That is the greatest thing I've ever seen.
Who said that?
Me. I said my wife grew up in Israel. I mean, she grew up in St. Louis. St. Louis and Israel could not be farther from each other.
Well, they've always said this: St. Louis, the Israel of the Midwest.
Well, there is East St. Louis and East Jerusalem. They're both different. I don't know.
That's what you were thinking.
Okay.
That's what you were thinking.
But,
guys. All right. Before we let you go, favorite movies? I hope it's not the same one. Is it the same one? God damn it.
No, not. But I mean, when we were growing up, we were the biggest fans of the movie Airplane. I mean, ever, because it's just silly comedy. And I remember our parents, this is another reason that we were like, comedy is important. So we had our uncle lived in Southern California, our dad's brother, and he worked for an appliance chain of stores called Phil and Jim's. And he sent us an early version of a VHS. Like, remember the early ones?
Oh, wow.
Popped up and came out, and you slid it in and popped it back in. So ours had a remote control. Okay. But it wasn't just a remote control that like you stand up and remote. It was connected with a cord. So it like defeats the purpose of a remote control. And the cord didn't reach all the way to the couch. So you had to stand
up like 4 feet away from the unit.
Okay. Now the brand of the VCR was one that we never heard of. Of course, you heard of Sony, Panasonic, all that. It was called Hitachi.
We had a Hitachi. We had a Hitachi.
So we, of course, jokingly called
microwave Hitachi.
Okay, so we had the Hitachi, the VCR, and we, of course, jokingly called it the Attachi because the thing was attached. Go get the Attachi. And so we had this VCR, and I don't know how we got this early, like an early version before it was out. It had been in theaters before it was out, of copy of Airplane. And our parents invited like all these people over to come in a group setting and watch Airplane. Now, they'd never seen it. Mostly people, and we were laughing. So like when the shit hits all of it, every little thing of like, all right, let's go get some pictures and let's go take some pictures. And they all just take photos off the wall. I mean, everything about it, every little thing just killed us. And we're in a room full of people laughing, watching it on a VCR watch party at our house. That was the only movie they ever did it with. They never did it with like, I don't know. I'm trying to think of like,
Moonraker.
Right. Right. Sophie's Choice, or they didn't do it with Silkwood, or they didn't do it with Chariots of Fire. You know what I mean? It was Airplane. So that says something to you as a kid that like, wait a minute, this is important. We don't invite people over. That's mine's Airplane. I loved it so much, and there are just jokes in that to this day still make me laugh out loud.
Yeah,
I'm gonna say my favorite movie, because I've thought about this a lot recently as I'm trying to show my 14-year-old son all the movies that I love, and this is one that I lament that I can't show him because there's so much drug use in it that like I have to wait until he's older and we can like I can
understand it. Right?
Is Dazed and Confused, and so Dazed and Confused came out in 93, 94, right, Rand?
I think 93. Yeah.
93. We were seniors in college at Michigan. So, and it was talking about a time that was only like 17 years earlier, 76. So like, it was like 16 years earlier. So if you made a movie right now in 23 about like 2007, that's what Dazed and Confused was at the time it came out. Crazy. But Richard Linklater, the movie he made, the fact that he captured so much, like to me, the detail of showing the moment after the baseball game before he gets beat up, where they have to shake hands and apathetically say, good game, good game, good game, good game. They say good game to everyone. Like that moment, all the details that he got right. And I love the movie Slacker. I like that as his first movie. But I thought this movie was it for so many reasons. It captured a feeling. It puts me in a good mood. I love every part of it. I mean, it launched a million careers. McConaughey was born on that. Ben Affleck, McConaughey, Joey Lauren Adams, Anthony Rapp. I mean, just incredible actors all the way through. I mean, and it just was this, and Parker Posey was incredible. And there was this feeling for me as I watched that movie where I'm like, it's funny, but it's not like Airplane funny, because like not everything is meant to be a joke. It's Austin, Texas. Like it's very Texas. There's a vibe in it that is like 1976 was this moment, this bicentennial feeling. The 70s was sort of like this lost time of like, we didn't know who we were. We didn't have the 60s. There is no time like that now. And there was like this moment where, the end of school year meant something to people. Like kids were just still kids, but they were pushing forward in ways that our kids don't do today. It just, it's such, as it gets older, it ages so beautifully for me. And it's just this great, and I can't wait till I can share it with him. But I do, whenever I have a chance, I watch that movie.
Fantastic.
Great. What about front row center? Any performer, speaker, anyone dead or alive, you guys get to sit front row center.
Oh my God, that's great. I mean, who for you? So we got a chance to see, and this guy was like, I mean, a hero to us. A lot of people say we looked like young versions of him, but we got a chance to watch him do a question and answer. I would love to go back in time and see him. And we met the other guys. So Carl Reiner and Mel Brooks did the 2,000-Year-Old Man, which if you go back and watch it, audiences don't really know what to do with it. It's funny. I saw a late night performance, and remember we were talking about that late night performance with Conan, and we're like, I don't know if that was that good, because there are moments that we think are hilarious that the audience didn't get. I've seen that in, like, they were on Ed Sullivan or something, and there was like a moment. It wasn't just like smashing out the gates, but it stands the test of time. It's this beautiful thing. I would have loved to have seen the two of them do. I would have loved to have been at a party when they whipped that out. And you say to yourself, okay, because Brooks was so funny, just every little thing he did. I just remember after he was like he had just directed The Producers. It won an Oscar. He was directing another movie and he went and did Dick Cavett show. He was probably like shooting all day, looking at these, and then he comes over and he's just got this energy like he just came off the set, and he's on Dick Cavett show, and he tells the story about bringing the Oscar back to his mom who's not impressed. And it's such a simple story about, like, she wasn't impressed with the Oscar and he just felt terrible about it. And like, it was just him being funny in that way. And I was like, God, I love it. So a few years ago, and not that long, he did a screening of Blazing Saddles and a Q&A afterwards. And we knew the guy ran it. This was in Denver. We were doing shows in Denver and he did it in Denver, and we were there. And so we went to the thing, and then we met him afterwards. We got to shake his hand and tell him he was great. And I met Carl Reiner years before that, but to be back in their prime and watch them do it, that to me would have been a phenomenal thing. Jay, who for you?
I want to go in a different direction. So lately,
and also you guys do look a lot like Reiner.
Reiner and Brooks. Thank you. Appreciate it.
Mel, hilarious. All right, I'm going to find this thing of Mel Brooks. Hold on. I find it. So I'm going to say this, and this is going to go in a different direction. Lately, I've been getting so into watching old videos or old clips of the Grateful Dead in the 70s on TikTok, Dead Talk, and all those other things. For a chance to see the Dead in like 77, when Jerry's voice was great, and he's not like, he doesn't look like he's 60 when he's 40, and like his voice sounds good. Like, Cornell 77 is like that. So much so, I'm thinking about the Cornell 77 show, and I was like, this is them at their height. Okay. They have, they understand what their band's concept is. It's super tight. They know what they're doing. They sound really great. They're not so big that you'd be in some giant music hall or a stadium where you can't even feel like there's an intimate moment with them. They're playing all the songs. Everything feels really good. There's a great vibe around the show. Jerry,
there he is. There he is.
There it is.
There he is.
Yeah.
There's Randy. So know that vibe. So I just think seeing the Dead in 77, maybe at that Cornell 77 show, that famous show, or even on that tour, to me would be a worthwhile thing. I would say that, or I was close to saying Bruce Springsteen at that time when it was the E Street Band, and they were really doing these like long shows where it was fun, and like Rosalita, the live version of that came out. But I'm gonna say Grateful Dead. Great call.
Fantastic.
All right, real quick, who's your MVP for the NBA this year, and who do you think wins it all?
Who's your MVP? I think, Jay, we're gonna have a different idea about this.
Okay, 1, 2, 3. Russell Westbrook. Just kidding.
Who's your MVP, Jay?
I mean, like, I love Jokic's game.
I love him so much. He's my guy. He looks like he shouldn't be playing basketball. He should be like a roofer.
So he's the guy when you pull up to the Y and you're playing in a pickup game and you're guarding him. Everyone on your team is like, dude, get on him and guard him. And you're like, I am. I'm all over him, but he's just making shots. That guy who has the weird hook shot but no vertical, he's that guy. So something in me is like, I love how unathletic he is. Meanwhile, he is very athletic.
Super athletic.
It's like sneaky athletic. And he, I think, finally has an opportunity to at least maybe take the Nuggets to the finals. And I love Denver. We love it as a comedy city. He's my guy. That's my guy. And
he's my vote too.
Who do I think wins it all? I don't know if I can say the Nuggets win it all. I think Boston wins it all because I think they just have that team vibe going right now that I love. So I say Boston, and Jokic wins MVP.
I'm going to make an outside the box thing. I think your NBA Finals will be the Denver Nuggets against the Philadelphia 76ers, and Joel Embiid, who I think is the most skilled big man in the game today. I think Jokic is a great player, but he certainly doesn't have the same outside shot that Joel Embiid has. And Embiid has to sit there. We were talking about this yesterday on our podcast with our buddy Brad Morris. Embiid has to sit there every year. He knows he's so skilled. He knows he's as good as he is, and watch this other guy get the MVP trophy every year. Right. And it's like, it's not going to change. They're like the same age. Embiid's going to be great for the next 10 years. And so is this guy's going to be great for the next 10 years. So to me, that would be such an unbelievable finals. I'd love to see it go 7 games, and I'm going to pick the 76ers to win.
Wow. I like it. It's interesting. We talk about on here every once in a while, we talk about athleticism, because we've had some of the greatest shooters in the history. We've had Steph, we've had JJ Redick, we've had unbelievable shooter and Steve Kerr. And we always ask them, like, when did you know, like, when did you go to your mom and say, how come I've never lost at darts? Like,
that's right.
hand-eye is absolutely athleticism, but we only think of running. But when you say with Jokic, it's like, he's also, he can see.
He reads it. He reads it.
He makes the right in chaos, and he always does it. And the guys that all have that, LeBron, the people that that just see it differently. But LeBron, some sort of athleticism.
But it's like. Go ahead.
It's a spatial awareness.
Yeah. But LeBron is not of this earth. Like, if you were to just put LeBron and just keep him stationary and create a mold out of his body and put it as a statue in a Greek, art history, put it in a museum, that would be like a person, like people that, if you looked at it in the future, you'd be like, people didn't look like that, did they?
Yeah.
Jokic is of this earth. Yes, he's 7 feet tall, but he is like guy who looks like he is of this earth. It's like,
but I think Jokic, how when you look at a magic eye photo, remember those old magic eye photos? It was a bunch of just like images, and you stare at it long enough, and then the dolphins come forward. I think Jokic looks at the court and sees the dolphins 12 seconds before you do.
Bit of a beautiful mind. Beautiful mind, right? Yeah,
he
nicely done.
Do you think he knows? I bet he knows tendencies of players. So he's like, all right, that guy there is going to go for the steal if I go that way. So I'm going to fake to get him off, backdoor cut. It's in. He's 3 steps ahead.
I also feel like his hear me out here. His ability to be slower. He's playing. He's not slow. He's not too slow.
No,
but he's fast enough, fast enough to be almost under more control than everyone else. A la Steve Nash, just playing at a different speed. Chris Mullin, Jeff Hornacek.
Yep.
I would use my athleticism too much against those guys, because those are normally the guys you're playing against.
That's right.
Luka.
Del Curry.
Slow than fast. It's like a pitcher like Greg Maddux who didn't overpower you, but he threw changeups, and he kind of just could, if he changed the speed from like 79 to 85, he could still make you swing and a miss. He couldn't overpower you, but you just didn't have your timing up. I love you guys. I have to go pick up my kids.
Yes.
We talk about picking up kids and being part of their lives. I could talk to you guys for 5 hours. I mean it. I
thank you for doing this.
Thank you guys so much.
Kudos to your mom and dad. They did an amazing job. As parents, we don't ever know what we're doing. We do good things, bad things. My parents raised me on Airplane, on Monty Python. Yep. And the first thing R-rated movie they ever took me to see was History of the World and Mel Brooks. And it changed my life. So I appreciate your mom and dad. Much love to the Sklar parents.
Thank you so much. Much love to your parents. I do feel like buddy. If we had grown up in the same place, we would have been friends growing up. We would have been your other twin friends. That's my dream.
Agreed. Thanks, buddy. Josh, the Sklars. I mean, I didn't want it to end. Obviously, they had to run us off.
I know it.
They had to run us off.
You can see why they are.
I hope
they
that we
do
find
everything.
out. I hope that we find out that they were texting each other while that happened. And they set up the frozen screen. So they're like,
oh,
okay,
yeah,
we got to go pick up the kids, bro. Yeah, they got us.
That was great. Yeah, I could have talked to them forever. First of all, just the twin thing is so cool. The Hollywood stuff is so cool. The hosting is so cool. Sports. I mean, yeah, I could have talked to them for a week about just a myriad of subjects.
Yeah, and you know how hard it is. Anybody going and kind of forging a different path that they haven't seen, they didn't see their parents as actors or comedians or anything like that. Taking that chance to do it.
Yeah, they didn't go to Hollywood High.
Yeah, but then doing it, and then you still have to be good in front of the camera and natural. I mean, and they are. It's amazing.
Yeah, they're really particular in this wonderful way.
They are, and you talk to them and shared experience stuff they were talking about. We grew up, we're all similar age. We all get pretty much everyone's sports references. You feel like you know them when you get on with them, even for the first time.
I thought about saying to them how unique our relationship is in that I knew you and you didn't know me.
Yeah.
And I have these shared experiences of me watching you. But we also grew up in the same state at the same time. Right. And so now, once we did get to know each other, we became such good friends because we laughed at the exact same, that we remember the same exact thing.
We know each other's stories.
Yep.
For the most part.
And now our moms are best friends.
That's right. Isn't that amazing?
Yeah, it's amazing.
It just warms my heart. I feel bad for them that we probably won't be around and they'll still be alive and kicking.
I know.
Buddy, all right, that was fun. Let's do it again next week.
Yes, sir.
All right, man. Join us next week. Back here once again for the Rex Chapman Show with my super dope homeboy from the Lextown, Josh Hopkins, powered by basketballnews.com.